Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, and in this series, this is my unpopular opinion in astrology series where we discuss my unpopular opinions in astrology. And the unpopular opinion for this video is Jupiter is not your husband, okay? Jupiter is not your husband. But before we get into that, if you enjoy my readings, you certainly could book a reading with me. All you have to do is email me at samastroreadings@gmail.com. That's samastroreadings@gmail.com, and I'll certainly get forward with you. I do birth natal chart interpretation readings and a bonus tarot as well too. So just email me and we could go forward with that. Getting back into the video, okay, and this is the unpopular opinion that Jupiter is not your husband, okay? In astrology, this is being taught so much, okay? I'm hearing it so much in astrology teachers trying to teach you that if you want to find your husband, that you go look into your Jupiter sign, that represents your husband. And I'm here to let you know that that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, it's actually very misogynistic, but we'll get into it, okay? First of all, where this comes from, actually, it comes from ancient astrology, okay? And a lot of ancient astrologers would teach that Jupiter is your husband. And this is because a lot of women were not able to do the things that Jupiter does, okay? Back in the days, back in the ancient days, women were not able to travel. Women were not able to have their freedom. Women were not able to educate themselves. Women were not allowed to be pastors, preachers. Women were slaves to men, literally slaves to men. They weren't even educated. So a lot of times when they would preach, when they would teach to women, they would say, your Jupiter is your husband, okay? Because women didn't have the access to tap into their inner Jupiter because they had so many limitations and things that dealt with Jupiter, which again is traveling, freedom, education, higher knowledge, being able to preach. And I can even argue that even more and just say that you still have access to your Jupiter. Society-wise might try to limit you, but we all have our own brains, we all have our own spirits, and we can combine them and use them to find a higher knowledge with that intuition, okay? Which is what I believe Jupiter is the knowledge and the spirit kind of working together. That's how you get your philosophies and your bigger ideas for the world. Everyone can tap into that. But of course, because of the limitations back in the day when it came to women, women were limited in these areas. So I guess it does make sense for them to have told them, hey, if you wanted to look for your Jupiter, look it in, this would represent your husband, because the husbands, men were allowed to educate themselves, men were allowed to travel, men had a lot more freedom. So a woman would have to go to her husband to get access to education. Men were the teachers, they were the educators. Women would have to go to men in order to do these things. If they wanted to travel, they would have to go with their husband. It was all led by them. So it made sense back in the day, but we are not back in the day. Fast forward to 2025. Women are allowed to do all these things. So it doesn't make sense to attach to such old, ancient ideologies, okay? And I'm not here to debunk ancient astrology in general. There's a lot of, it's the tradition, it's the root of astrology. It all began somewhere, but as we grow as a society, things change and we have to understand and adapt to that so that it actually makes sense to the modern times. And saying Jupiter is your husband does not make sense. So the first thing is Jupiter is not your husband because, one, as a woman, you are free to travel, okay? You don't need to go to your husband to travel, to go wherever you want, to explore. You can do that on your own. We live in a more freer world. You don't need your husband to explore the world, to adventure the world, to travel. Now, there could be other countries that are a little bit strict on women, but even with that, I will argue that you can explore and adventure through your inner spirit, okay? Jupiter is not just physical travel, but it's also travel through the mind and spirit, being curious about your world, seeing things in your world and being curious about them and exploring them, exploring ideas, asking questions about the world, using your intuition to get a hunch about what you feel about the world. Adventuring through the mind. There are so many ways to do that. But overall, women can travel. They don't need their husbands to access that in Jupiter. It does not make sense. Women can explore and travel and free themselves. 2, women can educate themselves. Okay, education is no longer limited to just men. It is free for women worldwide. Now, again, there are some countries where there are limitations. However, Jupiter is more than just reading a book. It's using your intuition to explore and question your world. Just having questions about your world, having your own opinions, having your own connection with God. All of that is a personal thing. It's really not through your husband. That's an illusion by the restriction society creates. But most women can educate themselves. They can go to the library. They can Google. They can educate themselves. They have these same opportunities for the most part. So you can explore and adventure and educate yourselves. You do not need your husband to do that. Back in the day, women weren't even allowed to read. So you saw the limitations there. We have this access. You do not need your husband to access that Jupiter energy. Women can educate themselves anywhere. Okay, I'm saying this all to say what Jupiter has is within you. You don't need that in another person, which is what it is suggesting when you say Jupiter is your husband. You got to understand what Jupiter's about. Women don't need their husbands to read, to educate themselves, to do this for majority of the world. And even if they do, there is still something higher when we talk about Jupiter, which is your spirit, your energy, your intuition, your connection to God, your ideologies of what you think for the world. You may limit them because of society, but that doesn't mean that you don't have it there. Even back in the day, women were limited to think for themselves, to have their own spirituality, but it didn't mean that they didn't have their own hunches. It did not mean that they didn't have their own intuitions. It didn't mean that their husbands would say something and be like, I don't know if I agree with that. Yeah, they will agree with it because they were told they had to, but that doesn't mean you don't have your natural own hunch, your natural own intuition, the natural own curiosity. That's in everyone. It's not accessed through another person. We all have a higher mind. And back in the day, they were women who went against this, who did try to educate themselves and went against it. And even though they got, penalized and punished, it still proved that everyone has their own inner Jupiter, their own inner freedom, their own curiosity, their own ideologies, their own philosophies. Even if someone trains you to be with someone, you still have it within you. So it's so incredibly sexist, so misogynistic, and so degrading to teach that Jupiter is your husband. Especially when you understand what Jupiter is about. It is incredibly misogynistic and incredibly outdated. Also, one of the biggest definitions of Jupiter is freedom. Freedom. So to say that Jupiter is your husband is to say that for women, your freedom is in your husband, not within yourself, which is not freedom. If you need someone else to be free, you're not free. Freedom is your own power. It's your own will to do what you want, to feel what you want, to have your own. It's not being bonded and codependent on someone else. So that's a direct contradiction to what Jupiter is. So when you say Jupiter is your husband, you're saying something a lot deeper. You're not just talking about relationships. You're literally saying that your freedom as a woman is in another man, not within yourself, which is, again, incredibly sexist and misogynistic. It's like, do you understand what Jupiter's about? Jupiter's about freedom. Freedom is being able to go on your own, do what you want. You don't wait on someone else. You're not codependent on someone else. That's the exact opposite, which Jupiter is not. Jupiter, if you have your Jupiter will never tell you you need somebody else. Jupiter doesn't operate like that. Jupiter is incredibly independent and because it's incredibly free. So again, saying Jupiter is your husband is basically saying that women can only find freedom in their husbands, which again is incredibly misogynistic, incredibly outdated, incredibly limiting, and just bondage. which is not freedom, which is not Jupiter, which we all have our own Jupiter. Doesn't make sense. Also, let's get very technical. Let's also get very technical because I also feel like people don't understand what Jupiter is, okay? Jupiter has nothing to do with marriage. Okay, you're not going to find marriage in Jupiter. Jupiter doesn't even get into those topics of marriage. So it's incredible that people would bring up husband when it comes to Jupiter. Now, I understand why they did that back in the day, because they wanted women to be reliant and codependent on men. It was a control, it was a strong, powerful patriarchy, it was a control system. But we are smarter now. Jupiter has nothing to do with marriage. It has nothing to do with marriage. In fact, Jupiter hates marriage because marriage is lockdown. It's lockdown. It's like prison to Jupiter. Think about Jupiter is represented by Zeus. Okay, Zeus was one of the big gods that were represented the Jupiter archetype. And what did Zeus do? Zeus cheated on his wife with multiple women. He cheated on Hera constantly. Why? Because he wanted his freedom. He wasn't about marriage. So how can you associate, you cannot associate Jupiter with marriage. Jupiter doesn't care for marriage, doesn't care about being locked down to somebody else. That is called a trap for Jupiter. Think about Sagittarius energy. Think about a lot of Sagittarius. Let's just get real. Let's get real. Think about Sagittarius energy. What are Sagittarius known for? Especially when you put them in the context of dating and romance. Venus in Sagittarius, Moon in Sagittarius. What do Sagittarius do? They have issues with commitment. They don't do marriage. Jupiter, Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter, that's why I'm talking about Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. They have issues with commitment. They want all their options. They want all their freedom. They don't want to be locked down. So to even associate Jupiter with being someone's husband, which is marriage, is an absolute contradiction. Jupiter doesn't care about marriage. Jupiter will cheat. Jupiter will want all its options with people. When you put it in the context of dating and when you put it in the context of relationships, Jupiter is not about relationships. Jupiter's like, get what you want. Mess with this person, mess with that person, mess with it. Have everything you want. It's about abundance and freedom and unlimited choices. It does not care about being locked down to one person. That is boring to Jupiter energy. That's why Jupiter that rules Sagittarius have troubles with commitment. If you want to look into marriage, you need to look into your Libra energy and your Scorpio energy. Libra energy will represent how you get into marriage, how you get into it, the dating phase, how you attract people. And Scorpio will represent how you lock down, how you lock it down. So if you want to look into marriage, who's your husband or who's your wife or how you get into it, you look into your Venus sign. You look into your Libra energy and your Scorpio energy. Libra will represent how you make the match and establish the marriage. Scorpio represent how it lasts, how you lock it down and how it lasts. Also look into your Venus sign. Also look into your Moon sign. Moon represents what you're comfortable with emotionally, how you nurture, how you connect, and what is compatible for you long term. Look into your Moon sign. Do not look into Jupiter. Jupiter has nothing to do with marriage. It is not in the topic of marriage. It is anti that. It is all about freedom. If you want to associate Jupiter with marriage, all Jupiter is going to tell you is have as many people as you want, whenever you want, however you want. This is why Sagittarius can't lock down. They just want options. This is why Zeus, who was the Jupiter archetype, kept cheating on his wife Hera. It's like, come on now. That's a trap to even look at Jupiter like that. So I say this all to say, these astrologers who keep saying Jupiter is your husband to women, that is incredibly misogynistic. It's very outdated. It is a trap. Jupiter does not care about that. You do not need your husband to tap into Jupiter energy. Jupiter is about your freedom. Jupiter is about your higher learning. Jupiter is about your spirituality, your philosophies. the way you look at life in a bigger picture, your ability to explore and adventure, and all women can do that without men. They do not need a man to do that. You have the power and the option. And say if you're living in a country that limits women, you still have your own intuition, your own hunch, your own curiosity. You can still tap into that to have your own thinking. You have your own mind. This is why we have our own individual bodies. That is freedom. If you want to tap into Jupiter, you tap into your independence and your freedom. You don't go to somebody else. That is contradiction of Jupiter. We all have our own Jupiter. We don't need to tap into other people to tap into our Jupiter. Jupiter is about freedom. It is not about bondage. And that is the unpopular opinion, okay? Please don't get into it. It's very misogynistic to say Jupiter is your husband. It is not, okay? You want to look into marriage, look into your Scorpio, your Libra energy, look into your Venus sign, and look into your moon sign to see what you're compatible with. But do not look, and also look into your Juno. But do not look into your Jupiter. That is completely sexist. Jupiter is for everyone. That is your good luck charm. That is what's going to bring out big opportunities for your life. And you don't need to tap into a man to do that. That is sexist and misogynistic. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. That is my unpopular opinion. Jupiter is not your husband. Jupiter is your freedom, which is independent. And I'll check you guys out on the next video. Thanks for watching. Also, don't forget to book a reading with me at samastroreadings@gmail.com. That's samastroreadings@gmail.com. And I'll check you guys later.